Hello, all. Um, so, the idea of me doing this video is I try to write all of these things, but I just get so overwhelmed, and perhaps I couldn't focus long enough to write all of these things that I wanted to write it. So, here I'm trying to talk it out. And take it whatever you can understand and apply in your daily life, especially at this time that what we are going through. So, as you all know, these are the time that we are very overwhelmed with a lot of information, information that keeps us awake, unnecessarily awake, and or also it's our brain continuously wanting more information. Perhaps it thinks that we will find some solutions, or there's a way that it's going to get better, but also what are the ways that we need to still be preparing ourselves, or where how we going to position ourselves. So it's all this dopamine effect that our brain is trying to release in order to stay intact and be aware of the situation, which works with the cortisol directly. So, as you know, cortisol is directly related with the stress, and it is important part of our daily life. We do need a certain amount of cortisol to get going. But then, if there's a little bit of an unnecessary amount of cortisol when the body has to release, then your brain start to think like, okay, if I need to release this much cortisol, then I need to have a certain amount of resources to produce that kind of a cortisol. So what it does is it starts to reserve more fat in our body, in the sense of like it might need to use it. So the dilemma is now, instead of your body using the fat that we have, your brain now start to reserve more fat from the consumptions of the food that we have. So how do we need to change it? First of all, if you have a little bit of a time, let's say you have a time to do any kind of a movement exercises, try to think about producing more resiliency in your movement rather than flexibility, because flexibility lengthens, or the idea of flexibility is like you're creating more space, so that means we can dump more stress in it. And I don't think that actually what we want. What we want is like, can we bring our body in a way that can feel that it can produce the resiliency, in a sense that we don't necessarily have to add more. But if that feels like it is coming out, it's okay to express. It's okay to express whatever the feelings and emotions that we're having right now. And that way we will have a better circulations, rather than just adding more stress in our system. So that's the one way to look at it. The second is, as we all do, is right now we are at home, or we are in a confined space, and whenever we have a time, we think like, in order to battle the stress, we tend to exercise. So the trouble is, this is a time where I would say it's like we're burning candle from both ends if we are not paying attention to it. How that works is, our brain is already asking for quite a bit of oxygenated blood, rightfully so, because we are continuously looking for more information. But then what we need to do is, how can we use the amount of resources, like let's say the oxygenated blood that we have, how can we use the same amount, instead of all going to your brain? How can we retract from the brain and then use it to our body? So the best way to do that is, you need to bring your system in a homeostasis before we go into getting into exercise mode. So it doesn't mean that don't exercise, but the intensity of the exercise that you already have in your mind, that should go down at least by 25%, if not if not 30%. So my point is, let's say on an average, when I go for training on a daily basis, like so in my 1 hour of training, I tend to bring my heart rate up to like a 155, 160. But now the same exercises, I don't let my heart rate to go any further than 125, 130. With the same idea, because my mind is also consuming a lot more information, hence that means it is being used. So if I try to use the same amount of energy for my body, then I will go into depletion. And as you know, like for the immune system, we want to make sure that our immune system is in at its best place, not down. Because the problem with your immune system going down is that then our autoimmune system start to kick in, such as our adrenaline, our thyroid. They start to come to play. So those guys are only good in your short interval phase. That means, let's say if you're a runner and you wanted to do 400-meter interval, which means you can only do that kind of a speed for a short amount of time, and then you need a rest before you start to spike up again. So that's something you wanted to think about, is as you start to go into any kind of exercises, try to start to build your exercises where you have a low intensity but longer period of time. For instance, if you're going to be in your Peloton, try to make sure that your heart rate doesn't go any higher than 130. Let's say, I'm just giving you a ballpark. But then if you are used to do it for 30 minutes, try to do that for 45 minutes. You still want to sweat, but you don't want it to produce unnecessary intensity, with the idea that once the exercise done, we're not going to go to sleep. We're not going to go to rest. We're going to go look at a computer again and then see what's the new information that is in there. So basically my point is, like, we're continuously be going. And so that way we will in a reality, we are actually depleting ourselves rather than rejuvenating. It does distract us, but it doesn't necessarily produce the same amount of energy that we wanted to keep it to shield our body from anything to attack us. So that's something I want you to think about. And if it is helpful, just to quickly send me some idea of, like, hey, Santos, I would like to learn more about something. Then I'll start to add some more stuff in it. I think I'm gonna on the next part, I'm gonna give you some ideas of, like, how we should be thinking about food, the relationship food at this time. So here it is. Thank you, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.